So continuing on with our Module 1, Algebra 1 released items from the 2024 Keystone, we are at question number 5. So the question number 5 is asking us to basically get an equation in terms of x. So right now the y is isolated, and what we want to do is we want to isolate the x. So we want to get that x by itself. It's also asking us to evaluate it when y is a particular value. So you have two ways you can go about this. You can substitute 28.1 in for y to begin, and then you can isolate the equation for x, or you can isolate the equation for x and then substitute in 28.1 in for y. And that's what I'm going to do, so I don't end up trying to combine like terms or anything like that. So if I just rewrite this, my goal is to isolate this variable y here. And so how we're going to do that is we're going to draw our line down the equal sign, and we know to get that x term by itself, first we need to subtract that 48.5 from both sides. So we're going to do that first. That's going to leave us with 8/3 x on the left, and it's going to equal y minus 48.5. And now to undo that multiplication of 8/3, when you are multiplying by fractions, we like to get rid of that by multiplying by the reciprocal of that fraction. So multiplying this entire side by 3/8, because what that does is 3/8 times 8/3 gives you 1, so it cancels that 8/3 out. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to move this over a little bit. So you see that when I go to multiply this by 3/8, I have that. So sometimes people will teach that multiplication of the reciprocal by just divide each side by 8/3. And then you have division with a fraction, and when you divide fractions, you multiply by the reciprocal. So jumping right to that multiplication of that reciprocal leaves us with a little less work. So now this is going to go away, this is going to go away, leaving us just with x. And we have 3/8, and then in parentheses, because you've got to multiply that entire right-hand side by that 3/8, y minus 48.5, and then the last step is our y is equal to 28.1. So we're going to take out that letter y and substitute in 28.1. Now it doesn't want us to evaluate, it just wants us to leave it like that. And so hopefully you can see that our answer we should be selecting is answer B. And it's really easy to mistakenly get A if you didn't know the opposite of addition was to subtract. And it's going to be really easy to get C or D if you think to eliminate the 8/3 that's being multiplied on that left-hand side by multiplying by 8/3, when in reality you need to multiply by the reciprocal. So just a little review. If you have something like this, and you need to eliminate that fraction, we call it multiplication of the reciprocal. We multiply both sides, and then you would have x equals 15/2. Okay, so that's question number 5. Okay, so we are going to continue on with question 6 from the Module 1 released items. So this is asking more of our arithmetic properties and making sure we know those. I wouldn't stress necessarily memorizing them because they're on your formula sheet, but you do need to be able to understand what they're saying on our formula sheet that they provide. So we're going to take a look at them. And before we do that, we're going to see if there's any we can eliminate. So this is saying one of the steps Nisha used to correctly solve an equation is shown below. So it shows line 1, there was 18 plus 8x, And then in line 2, what she did was she rearranged that. She took, I'll use a different color, it's something I didn't use yet. She took her 8x and her 18 and swapped them so that she can have her constants, 18 and that minus 4, side by side, so she can then, hopefully in the next step, combine them. So it's asking us which set of statements describes the procedure that Nisha used to go from line 1 to line 2 and identify the property that will justify this procedure. So I think we are all hopefully in agreement that the difference between line 1 and line 2 is simply that she switched places with the 18 and the 8x. And so we see that as an option. In A, Nisha changed the order of 18 and 8x, and in B, Nisha changed the order of the 18 and 8x. In option C, it's saying that what Nisha did was she added negative 18 to both sides, which she did not do. So we can cross off option C. So by default, we won't even have to look at the additive inverse property. And it's saying the same thing in D, which she did not do anything to both sides. So we can cross off C and D as choices. Okay, so now looking at this, we just have to determine, is it the associative property or the commutative property? So we're down to a 50-50 just by understanding what she did and being able to pick that out. So let's just briefly zoom in on our formula sheet and go over what the commutative property and the associative property are saying. So here's basically an example. For the commutative property, it's basically saying if you have 1 plus 2, that's the same thing as having 2 plus 1. It's saying you can swap the order when you are adding two things. It also says it for multiplication, but in this case, we are dealing with addition. So it's basically saying if you put the 1 first or you put the 2 first, no matter which one comes first, if you add them together, you're going to get the same thing. And hopefully you agree. 1 plus 2 will give us 3. And 2 plus 1 gives us 3. So no matter what, we get 3. It doesn't matter the order in which we're going to add things, they will add to the same value. That's what the commutative property is saying. The associative property is saying you're not necessarily changing the order, you're just changing which things you're adding first. So this is saying that if I'm adding 3 things and I take these first 2, 1 plus 2, that gives me 3, and then I do 3 plus 3, that gives me 6. That's the same thing as if I take the 2 and the 3 and I add them first, which will give me 5, and then I'm going to do 1 plus 5, which will give me 6. So it's not necessarily changing the order, it's changing which two things you are going to combine first with addition. So whether you do the 1 and the 2 first, or whether you do the 2 and the 3 first. You could also do the 1 and the 3 first, and then add the 2, and you would still get 6. So with that being said, all we did here is we did not change what we're adding first. There was no parentheses, so you should be able to eliminate that associative property because, one, we don't see any parentheses showing which two things are being combined first, and second, hopefully you do recognize it is the commutative property because, whoopsie, how did that go away? You just swapped the places of two values that were being added. You said 18 plus 8x is the same thing as 8x plus 18, so I'm just going to switch them. So our answer here should, in fact, be B. Okay? So that's what we should have for that problem. So that was question 6.